Hi, I'm Lisa Jacobson. I'm an art teacher at Collegiate School in New York City. I've been there for 5 years, and before that, I was at a school outside of Boston. I teach 7th grade through 12th grade in a wide variety of media, sort of depends on the year. Um, and this year, as everyone knows, was a kind of crazy year, and we were trying to get as much in and as much curriculum as we could do as possible with the constraints of the pandemic and students being many students being remote, and at different times teachers were remote and materials were an obstacle, which I'm sure everyone else has dealt with too. So a project that I had done in previous years with ninth graders is a collage self-portrait where students used color aid paper and divided it into values and arrange those on their face and to create shapes that created their faces, and hopefully this would say something about themselves. And it was a great project, and it really, students who were very precise loved it, but it was going to be too hard to manage with students taking home and keeping track of tiny little pieces that they had cut out and trying to remember where on their faces they went. And we did it on somewhat of a large scale, I think 18 by 24, and students were traveling, and it was just going to be too hard to do this project at home. So we pivoted and tried to do it using other materials. And ninth graders at my school typically don't have iPads, they use computers. So we borrowed some iPads from the IT department and Apple Pencils for students to use, which they were so excited about. And we tried to do the whole project remotely. So I'll show you some examples of some of the photos. And in past years, these are some examples of what the cutouts would look like. And students could use light values to show light areas and dark colors to show dark values, but they could also take it in any number of directions that they wanted to, and they were quite expressive, and there was a lovely texture to the paper. So this year, as a way of trying this project, we asked students to take photographs of textures and patterns of things that were important to them or said something about themselves. So here's some fur from my dog, and some photos on a gray day of some branches in a place that is significant to me, some bark, a bedspread, and I asked students to take a wide variety of these images of patterns and textures around them, so some lights, some darks, and some values in between. And they did great things. They came up with clouds of different, when it was more cloudy and more sky or fewer clouds. They did patterns in their bedrooms. They did food. They could do texts of a book that they were reading or something that was important to them. They did all kinds of really interesting things. Their notebooks, their computers, what they saw around them. And I did the same project too alongside them, so that we could, so I could see what the hiccups would be. So included in that, I included some travel photos just in case I wanted to use them for their patterning, for their colors. I have a tessellation program app on my phone that's just pretty fun to make patterns with and very easy. So I included a few of those just so I could have them as in case I wanted them, and different ideas of different things. And we looked at the artist named Bisa Butler, who I think is just a tremendous artist, and she's doing her work in fiber using quilts, but she is expressing value and really showing personality with lights and dark values and the kinds of patterns that she chooses to include. I think she's absolutely tremendous. And here's another image of her. So I showed students her work. In retrospect, I did not emphasize her work enough, and I wish I had done that more. Another thing that I wish I had done more is, even though I asked students to come up with a variety of lights and darks for the patterns that they had taken, I think a good in-between step would have been to have organized them in terms of lights and darks and really made a nice grayscale to work with. So I'm going to show you an example. So here I started with just a regular photo of myself, and I could have done a more expressive photo. Some of the students did, but I just started with a basic photo with a basic background. And I used Photoshop on the computer to erase the color information, so it was left with black and white, and then I used a filter to outline the areas so you could really delineate the values very easily. And I don't have to do this, but because these were 9th grade students and this was the first time they had tried this, and I think this is a really helpful tool for them. So then I took this image and I went to Photoshop Mix on the iPad, and if you're not familiar with it, Photoshop Mix is great. It does a lot. It's a pretty different program than the one that's in the on the computer. It's simpler, and for our purposes that was just great, and I think we chose it because it was either free or very inexpensive. So I'm starting a new image. I'm going to start with this color separated or value separated image of myself. And again, we're in Adobe Photoshop Mix. And essentially I want to erase some areas of my face and fill those areas with the patterns instead. So I'm going to add another image. And I will go with one of these bird images. And I'm going to make it a bit bigger. Now obviously I can't see my face with the bird image on top of it. So I'm going to switch the order by pressing down here and dragging that. And so now it's my face on top of the tree bird image. And I'm going to use this for one of the lighter grays in my face. So I'm going to go to Cutout and then make sure to tap on Subtract on the left side and not Add. And I find it a lot easier if you enlarge enlarge the area. So it wasn't doing it right away. So now I'm cutting out. Oh, well, it cut out the piece, but So I'm going to start erasing the areas that I want to be the tree value. There we go. And if you take off more than you want to, like let's say I go over here and I don't want that, you can go back to Add on the left side and kind of erase what you just did. But I think for some of the pieces it's okay to have, for not all the little pieces to be identical to the same value. So as long as they're close enough. Looking for other areas where I saw a similar value. Go back to Subtract. Again, it took a little too much here, and I can decide whether I want to put more back in there, whether I want to have that real highlight on the bridge of the nose. So you get the idea. And then you can get some pieces that are in the hair. That can look pretty cool. So I'm using my fingers for this, but students used either their fingers or the Apple Pencil, whichever worked better for them. And I can kind of move it around and see, because I've subtracted those areas, I can see where I like it best. So I can keep going back and forth, adding more of that in. And then to add another layer, a different pattern, I need to combine these two layers. So I hold down the top layer and I press merge down. And that kind of marries the two images, so now they're one. And I'm going to add another pattern, the same way that I did it before. So this is a really dark pattern, and again I can't see my face, so I'm going to move it by tapping it. Trying to move it. And let's see what happens. So I start doing cutout, and again on subtract, and this is a really dark value, so it's cutting it out, but it didn't have the other image behind it. So I'll go back. Oh, it's on, and right now it's in the mode where you can't see it. There we go. So you're seeing some of the hiccups that we've run into, and then, but once you get it, it's pretty simple. I want to make sure that the image of myself is highlighted so that I know what I'm cutting out. And again, cut out, subtract, and yeah, that's kind of cool. Oh, those letters might be kind of cool. I'd like to show you some images of students' work. Here you can see one that included many different patterns and textures. When students were finished, I asked them to write up some information that described what the patterns and textures were and why they were significant to the student, to give a sense of context and meaning. I love that this student included some interesting places in the background and the clouds that I mentioned earlier. I would have liked this student to zoom in on the small details and be able to eliminate those pixels. That's sort of indicative of a somewhat quicker job. Some students used color, others kept it to black and white. And I think students who took the greatest risks in the patterns that they chose really were most successful. So here's one where the student downloaded some patterns from the internet for the background, and if I were to do this project again, which I really hope to in the future, I really would push students to not have plain spaces, or not very many of them. I think that this is a somewhat simple solution on the face, and I would have loved to have seen him push it even farther, even to the point of it distorting a simple image of himself. So those are the images that students are willing to share, and have fun with this project. I think it has so many possibilities and opportunities, and I would love to see or hear what people come up with. Thank you.